So, picture this. A country fights for its freedom for decades, united by a common goal and shared sacrifice. And then, at the very moment of victory, that nation gets ripped in two. That's what we're talking about today. India's final, incredibly turbulent, and ultimately tragic chapter under British rule.
And that really brings us to the question at the heart of it all. For the most part, the Indian independence movement was a unified struggle. So how on earth did that unity just shatter at the last minute? How did it lead to the birth of India and Pakistan amidst some of the worst violence the world has ever seen? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go back to the beginning of the end for the British Raj.
We're going to start in 1942. Now, Britain is in the middle of World War II, and they send Sir Stafford Cripps to India with what they're promising is a real path to freedom. You can just imagine the hope in the air. But then comes the crushing disappointment. The proposal? It's basically just a delayed promise, a way to get India's support for the war right now. And for the Indian leaders, that was it, the final straw. The well of patience had run completely dry.
Now listen to these words. This wasn't just another political speech. No, this was a seismic shock. Coming from Mahatma Gandhi, the man who built his entire life's philosophy on nonviolence, this call to do or die was absolutely electrifying. It was a signal to everyone that the time for polite negotiations was over. This was the moment the Quit India movement was born.
The British, of course, had a plan. They thought, hey, we'll just cut the head off the snake by arresting all the leaders. Well, they were dead wrong. At dawn on August 9th, they swept up Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, pretty much the entire top brass of the Congress Party. But instead of crushing the movement, they lit the whole country on fire. With the leaders in jail, the people of India became their own leaders. The slogan Bharat Chhoro, Quit India, it wasn't just a political demand anymore, it was a roar of defiance that you could hear all across the subcontinent.
And this uprising wasn't some centrally planned campaign. Oh no. It was more like 1,000 different acts of defiance happening all at once. It was a symphony of resistance, you could say. From sabotaging railway lines to printing illegal newspapers, ordinary people found incredible ways to challenge the British, who were now stuck fighting a war on two fronts, one across the globe and another one right here in their most prized colony.
I mean, just try to picture it. In the dead of night, you've got students huddled around a secret printing press, their hearts pounding as they crank out another illegal news sheet. Somewhere else, a young woman, Usha Mehta, is risking her life broadcasting messages of hope and freedom from a hidden radio station. That's what this movement was, a decentralized, brilliant network of pure courage that the British just couldn't stamp out.
And this went way beyond just protest. This was independence in action, on a small scale. In places like Balia, Tamluk, and Satara, British authority literally just disappeared for a while. Local leaders stepped in and created their own Prati Sarkars, or parallel governments. They ran courts, organized food distribution, kept the peace. They weren't just fighting British rule. They were actually building a new India, right from the ground up.
But while all this was happening from within India, another powerful force was gathering on the horizon. The fight for independence was about to get an actual military wing, led by one of the most dynamic and, let's be honest, controversial figures in the whole story.
Enter Subhas Chandra Bose. He was a man who believed the time for asking was long past. He had completely lost faith in nonviolence and was convinced that freedom had to be taken by force. After an incredible escape from house arrest, he ended up in Southeast Asia, where he took command of the Indian National Army. His slogan, "Give me blood and I will give you freedom," was a direct challenge to everything Gandhi stood for. So while Gandhi was leading a civil uprising, Bose was building an army to march on Delhi.
Now, the INA might have lost the actual war, but in a way they won something much bigger. After the war, the British made a huge mistake. They put 3 INA officers on public trial, a Hindu, a Muslim, and a Sikh. All this did was create 3 new national heroes and unite the entire country against the British. Then, in 1946, the Royal Indian Navy mutinied. That was the real shockwave. If the British couldn't even trust the Indian soldiers and sailors who were the bedrock of their empire, well, who was left? The writing was on the wall, the game was up.
So, with their empire basically crumbling around them, the British knew they had to leave. The question wasn't if anymore, it was how. And this kicked off a series of frantic, high-stakes negotiations. But as we're about to see, every single attempt to find a compromise just seemed to push the two sides further and further apart.
Okay, so first they try the Rajagopalachari formula. It was a clever idea. Basically, let the Muslim majority areas vote on separation, but after independence. For Muhammad Ali Jinnah and the Muslim League, that wasn't good enough. He wanted Pakistan guaranteed, not as some future maybe. So that failed. Then came the Wavell Plan. That fell apart over who got to represent India's Muslims. The Muslim League said, only us. The Congress, which had many prominent Muslim members, said absolutely not. Every failure was just another step down a very dark road.
This was the last real chance for United India, the cabinet mission. But look at this. The two sides were reading from completely different books. Congress saw the plan to group provinces as optional, a way to have a flexible, united country. The Muslim League saw that same grouping as mandatory, non-negotiable. For them, it was the first concrete step towards an independent Pakistan. It's like they were looking at the exact same blueprint, but seeing two totally different buildings. There was just no middle ground left.
And once the cabinet mission fell apart, that was it. The talking stopped. That fragile, flickering hope for a united India just shattered, and the language of politics was completely drowned out by the rising tide of fear and violence. The path to partition was now clear. And this is the moment when all that political failure spilled onto the streets. In August 1946, frustrated with the deadlock, the Muslim League called for Direct Action Day to press its demand for Pakistan. In Calcutta, it unleashed a firestorm of communal violence that became known as the Great Calcutta Killing. That was just the start. A horrific wave of retaliatory violence then swept across the country, and the genie of communal hatred was truly out of the bottle.
And then 1947 arrives and everything just accelerates at this breakneck, terrifying speed. In February, the British Prime Minister, Clement Attlee, drops a bombshell. Britain is leaving by June 1948, whether India is ready or not. The clock is officially ticking. So, Lord Mountbatten arrives as the last viceroy with one mission: get it done. He takes one look at the absolute chaos and violence and makes the decision: India will be free, but it will be divided. And from that point on, it was just a mad dash to the finish line.
And so, at the stroke of midnight on August 15th, 1947, freedom finally came to India. But it was a freedom born in darkness, a victory that was stained with blood. The long, dark night of colonial rule was over, but a new and in many ways more terrible dawn was breaking over the subcontinent. This was the piece of paper that made it all official, the Indian Independence Act. And with the stroke of a pen, it drew a line on the map, the Radcliffe Line, that would cut right through villages, farms, and families. The partition of the provinces of Punjab and Bengal in particular unleashed one of the greatest human tragedies in history. It created a wound so deep that it has never really healed.
The leaders of the two brand new nations now had this unbelievable task ahead of them: building a future out of the ashes of the past. For India, the challenge was to build a secular, democratic nation out of this incredible diversity. And for Pakistan, the challenge was to forge a completely new national identity. For both, the road ahead was going to be incredibly long and difficult.
You know, the story of 1947 is this incredible mix of triumph and tragedy. It's a powerful and painful reminder that the price of freedom is often unimaginably high. And it leaves us with this question that still hangs in the air today. What is freedom really worth when the nation that fought for it as one ends up being divided at the very moment of its birth?